50 years ago, my parents brought us back from the United States to this part of the world and began a journey collecting modern and contemporary Arab art from various countries during their travels in this part of the world. Today, my parents' journey has culminated in a vast collection of modern and contemporary Arab art, including photography, painting, sculpture, conceptual art. There are over 4,600 pieces in this collection. And 5 years ago, my father asked me to put some order to this collection and make it available to generations like myself and others coming down the line to learn about art. A few weeks ago, my friends at Citi Private Banking asked me if I would participate in Art Beyond Borders, a program that introduces their vast customer base to cultures through art around the world. Of course, when my friend Susan asked me if I would do this, and my friend Ahmed and Sana, all three of whom are at Citibank, asked if I would encourage me actually to do this program, I said of course I would. Of course, today we're living in the age of COVID. I have my mask here on my arm. We're going to be talking to you about visual cues, symbols, and icons through art that will give you a clue into the Arab world. Leads in Artistic Cues from the Arab World is a collective effort by our wonderful team of senior associates here at the Dalloul Art Foundation. However, I really do need to give some extra credit to Wafa Roz, a senior associate here, whose brainchild this whole presentation is today and who is mostly responsible for curating this show and pulling together the team that will present to you today. Besides introducing the foundation, which is based here in Beirut, Lebanon, one of my assignments from Wafa was to introduce one of my dearest friends here, an amazing artist by the name of Ayman Balbaki. I'm standing in front of one of his paintings over here. This one of a Middle East Airlines airliner that was bombed during the war, our civil war here in Lebanon in 1982 on the tarmac at Beirut Airport. The team here at the Dalloul Art Foundation will be taking you on this wonderful journey to learn about all these artistic cues through symbolism and iconography in art. I look forward to walking you through one of my all-time favorites and actually a very, very dear friend of mine. Ayman is what I would call a hyper-expressionist. His paintings are usually full of symbolism, having been born in 1975 and grown up pretty much most of his young and adolescent life through the Civil War. He's kind of taken it upon himself to really be an archivist of history, of the destruction of what happened here in Beirut during our Civil War. And one of the icons that Ayman became very famous for was the use of the kafiyeh. Now, typically, when people see this piece of cloth on someone, it's been around actually for thousands of years, they think of terrorism or death. For people from this part of the world, they think of this character as a freedom fighter in the context because it's become a symbol of the Palestinian fighter over here in their struggle against Israel. Ayman really never saw things that way. He saw this really as some kind of a hero. He grew up in an area, a part of Beirut, which was considered a safe part. It was a Jewish quarter called Wadi Abu Jamil. And this was also a part of Beirut that a lot of folks from the south, a lot of Kurds came to, and these people tend to like this colorful cloth. They use it in their dresses, they use it in their homes, and as a playful homage to this very serious figure, Ayman's taken these materials and stretched them on his canvas and uses them as a symbol to remind people about his background, about his people. In this particular case, Ayman was also very careful to make the character somewhat androgynous, meaning you can't tell whether it's a male or a female. I'm very proud to have it as part of the collection of the Dalloul Art Foundation, and I'm very proud to have Ayman as one of my dearest friends.
ملعون في كل الأديان من يهدر حق الإنسان.
إننا لن نقبل أن يعيد التاريخ نفسه مرة أخرى. إننا قد اتجهنا قدما إلى الأمام لنبني مصر بناء قويا متينا.
The act of collecting at the Dalloul Art Foundation took a clear course since 1974, trying to reunite the Arab creativity under one cultural background. In this challenge was both the work صوت العرب of Chant Avedisian, meaning the voice of the Arabs. Chant created this work in 2008. صوت العرب, title of this work, is also the name of a radio station very famous in the 1950s in Egypt. It used to broadcast the political opinion of the Cairo regime throughout the Arab nations, and deliberately it used to infuse the idea or the dream of one Arabic nation. Chant Avedisian created this work on corrugated panel. He stenciled figures from the history. The first figure stenciled here is of Kulthum. Kulthum was the most famous and charismatic singer in the Middle East in the 20th century. Every Thursday night for more than 10 years, her concerts were broadcast on the radio صوت العرب. She sang for love, but also lyrics with nationalist and political overtones, representing the hopes and aspirations of the Arabs. The second figure is the Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, father of Arab nationalism and pan-Arabism. He was the most popular Arab leader of the 20th century, loved for his charisma, endorsement of Arab values and culture, and his anti-colonial stance. His speeches, when broadcast on the radio, Voice of the Arabs, were widely heard in the Arab world. It carried also the dream of reuniting the Arabs under one political identity. The third figure is a 19th century anti-colonial activist and philosopher Jamaluddin al-Afghani. His speeches reflected popular ideas such as pan-Islamism. Avedisian stenciled those three figures on an energetic background of militiamen, maybe stating that the sound of the rifle is the number 4 voice of the Arabs. The three carriers of the Arab voice are depicted here as hypnotizers. They are spreading beliefs like pan-Arabism, pan-Islamism, Arab nationalism that were once a dream and now are a utopia. One of the Dalloul Art Foundation's political symbolic work is the drawing by Youssef Abdelke. Yusuf Abdelki was born in Syria in 1951. His art was always infused with his political agenda. He was arrested under the presidency of Hafez al-Assad in 1979, and when he came out of prison in the beginning of the 80s, he produced a series called Figures, where he impersonated the people in power. Figure number 4 was created in 1992 with pastel and collages on paper. We can see in vivid colors and straight lines the frontal figure of 2 men and a woman. In the middle of the trio, an imposing man with his austere look and mustache. He is wearing a ribbon and medals that may indicate that he is an officer or a representative of the authority. This man is wearing a multicolored outfit, as if he was a clown, but a severe clown. In his hand, he is holding a recorder, as if he was recording all what has been said, invading privacy. Surrounding this symbol of authority and power, a man and a lady, as if, again, they were some kind of clowns. Clowns who do not touch the ground. She is footless and his feet are floating off the ground. Those people hold a severe irony. The Mickey hat, their eyes that cannot in fact see. It's an oppressive scene where the artist is trying to impersonate the threatening atmosphere created by people in power. He juggles between rage and irony to portray his own revenge.
Here we see an attractive and graceful large-scale painting executed with acrylic on canvas in 2016 by Iraqi contemporary artist Faisal Laibi Sahi. It is one of Sahi's latest additions to a series of paintings entitled The Baghdad Café. Sahi started this series in the 1980s and continues to revisit it to date. The artist drew inspiration from a 13th century illustrative manuscript known as Maqamat al-Hariri. It was a social satire written by Iraqi storyteller al-Hariri and vividly illustrated by late Baghdadi artist Yahya bin Mahmoud al-Wasiti. The Baghdad Café presents the café not only as a communal space, but also as a platform for social satire. Sahi stages key figures that represent different classes of Iraqi society. He shows them smoking hookahs, drinking tea, refreshments, and socializing. His work is a perfect depiction of Iraq's social stratification structure. We see here religious and military men and intellectuals mingling together, as well as members of the working class represented by characters such as the tea boy, the shoeshine boy, and the fisherman behind. Sahi's characters engage with various types of print media. While some read Sumerian mythology, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, others read on the history of religious traditions in Islam, like the religious man holding the Sahih al-Bukhari book. Some simply follow current affairs, like the traditional Arab man over there, cloaked in an orange galabiya, reading the newspaper. Coming closer to the newspaper, we realize that the headlines read in Arabic, Daesh, الدولة الإسلامية تنهب آثار الموصل. It's a critique on the Islamist Daesh group who have lately destroyed and looted archaeological sites in Mosul in Iraq, basically in 2015. This wide range of reading materials hints at a diversity in intellectual curiosities within the Iraqi society. Each character in the Baghdad Café is obviously dressed for the part. Each has a costume or a specific headdress. While turbans adorn the heads of religious men, the kafiyya and the igal covers the head of traditional Arab men. Some young men wrap the kafiyya around their head as a symbol of Arab solidarity, or as an artistic twist, like the artist over here. Members of the bourgeoisie wear a fez, the tarboush. Highly educated individuals and government officials wear the sidara, such as this gentleman here wearing a purple English suit and a pair of Oxford shoes. The sidara, or the Faisaliya, was first implemented by King Faisal I as a national headdress in the 1920s. Through this broad figurative depiction, we see one single woman, pictured in the far left, veiled in a black chador. Conservative as she seems, she is hesitant to step into an obvious patriarchal society. As we've noticed, costumes play an essential role in Sahi's work. They lend a social and class identity to each of his characters. In this work, Sahi hints to Iraq's recent political history through hidden visual codes. Looking above, between all this collection of household memorabilia, we notice a ceramic teapot on which the artist has painted the image of Abdul Karim Qasim. Qasim was an Iraqi army brigadier who, with his troops, was behind the toppling of the Iraqi monarchy in July 1958. It is weird that the artist depicts the religious and the military man with glass eyes. Could it be that the artist is asking us to question their perception, their vision, and hence their credibility? Now, in terms of form, we notice that Sahi's painting lacks depth. However, remarkably, he achieved an uneven three-dimensionality. The figures attain a volumetric feel, while the background is completely flat. It is worth noting that Sahi usually adopts an archetypal male figure throughout his work, a bold male with flawless facial features. This figure reminds us of Sumerian figurines, or maybe it could symbolize the artist himself as a narrator and a gatekeeper of Iraq's history. Sahi's striking work is certainly a blend of the past and the present. It is a melange of fantasy and reality.
We have here three paintings of the Tunisian artist Abdelaziz Gorgi, who was one of the first Tunisians to study at the Institut Supérieur des Beaux-Arts in Tunis in 1944. The œuvre that he produced is a celebration of the Tunisian culture, like in the painting here, Les attributs de la culture tunisienne, executed in 1970. Coming from a family of artisans, Gorgi integrated elements from the traditional Tunisian craftsmanship in this work, such as the fish, which is also called huta, much employed in the traditional making of jewelry, and which symbolizes chance and prosperity. In the lower center of the composition, we can also see the motif of the khumsa, which is commonly used as a talisman in the countries of North Africa and in the Middle East to protect from the evil eye. It has been reported that these two motifs, huta and khumsa, find their origins in the Phoenician beliefs, as they are related to the goddess of fertility called Tanit. The body features of the characters illustrated in this scene recall the aesthetics of ancient arts, featuring the almond shapes and the very simplified lines of the bodies. Abdelaziz Gorgi created a dreamlike world which embodies the rich artistic heritage of Tunisia, which has lasted to this day.
As we approach this space, we see works by Palestinian artists imbued with symbols and local iconography. Those two horizontal woodcut prints on paper in black and white were executed by Mustafa al-Hallaj. Born in 1938 in Palestine, Hallaj was 9 years old when he and his family fled Palestine to Egypt, where he received his art education. He later lived between Beirut, Egypt, and Syria. The artist began this work in 1996 as an ongoing project. Those two friezes are part of a continuously illustrated narrative of 8 rows, 12 meters each. It was showcased at the Station Museum in Houston in 2003 as part of the Made in Palestine exhibition. The last part was executed in 2002. Al-Hallaj died in 2002 in a fire in his studio as he was trying to save his work. Entitled Self-Portrait, Man, God, and the Devil, this significant and final work by Al-Hallaj was made of a series of carved figures on Masonite. His work is both an autobiography and a political history of the Palestinian struggle. Reading this work from right to left, we see the artist's figure leading a procession, and then we see his self-portrait with his spiky hair and his long beard. The artist amassed his illustration with mythological creatures and animals such as snakes, birds, oxen, bulls, and a giant rooster such as this one up here. Most of these creatures are suggestive of divinity, vigilance, and mythological gods in ancient cultures. The crocodile, god of the Nile, or Sobek, once symbolized strength and power in Egyptian art. In the far left, we see 2 crocodiles animated in the form of humans having a conversation. One is smoking a pipe and the other wearing eyeglasses, smoking a cigar. They might suggest capitalism or leaders of this era. Next to them, there's a woman holding a key. The key is a typical symbol of the house keys that Palestinians kept when they were thrown out of their homes and the promise of return. Below, we see rural life with trees, houses, and jugs of water. And we also encounter here pregnant women with pouring milk, which symbolizes fertility and the hope of the birth of a new generation. Al-Hallaj evokes the culture of Near Eastern civilizations such as the Canaanites, the Sumerians, and the Egyptians. However, the work is indebted to Pharaonic art, which the artist familiarized himself with while he was in Egypt. It has the typical sequencing of flattened figures and interwoven stylized depictions with foreground and background in one image. Although Al-Hallaj's work echoes surrealism in its blend of the imaginary and erotic, the artist often drew inspiration from real life, from real-time events. Some scholars refer to Hallaj's style as magical realism. Al-Hallaj once said, and I quote, "We Palestinian artists are an orchestra. We are one choir. We have many friends and many died. We are a walking graveyard of the personalities who had left us." Al-Hallaj has kept this work behind as a commemoration to the Palestinian people.
Shakir Hassan al-Said is a modern Iraqi artist whose work can be divided in 2 parts. Here, the work entitled The Number 30, produced in 1985, belongs to his second artistic stage, where he found inspiration in spirituality, and especially in the Sufi philosophy. The Sufi philosophy is related to the unity and infinity of God, on which al-Said worked by combining Latin letters like A and B, and numbers like 9 and the number 30 here in Arabic. But the painter was interested in the lines and the forms of these elements more than their actual meanings. With this approach, he referred to the science of al-Jafar from the Islamic period, which says that letters express qualities of materials and numbers reveal secrets they contain. Al-Sa'id explored the space between what's visible and invisible. He used the paint like a spray, and he treated the canvas like a wall that he damaged by scratching it, as if he was looking for something hidden behind it. Shakir Hassan al-Sa'id highly contributed to the modern Iraqi art movement by founding the theory of one dimension, al-Bu'ad al-Wahid, which integrates the Islamic philosophy in the art practice to free the human expression.
This work here is executed by the student of Shakir Hassan al-Sa'id, the Iraqi female artist Hana Malallah. Her practice focuses on the qualities of line, shape, and texture. Growing up during times of war and destruction in Iraq, specifically the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s, Hana Malallah drew inspiration from destruction itself. During that period, artists in Iraq had no access to painting materials and art tools. For that, Hana Malallah created something that she would call the ruins technique. In this large-scale, intricate piece, Hana Malallah has limited herself to burnt canvas that she would lay on top of each other, and to knotted ropes that are gradually set by the artist in a module that she would organize all along the painting. The ruin technique refers to both contemporary and ancient Iraq. On the one hand, it reminds us of recent wars, of course, and on the other, it allows the artist to express her sensitive reading to shape and line that she had gained through her studies and writings about Mesopotamian art. This is another work by Iraqi artist Hana Malallah. Actually, it's a perfect example of what we're trying to show here in our presentation as part of Art Beyond Borders. It is full of codes, signs, and symbols. Hana Malallah has also used the ruin technique in this piece. If we come closer, we notice that the artist has folded the canvas pieces into modules of around 5 by 5 centimeters and subjected them to fire, each and every piece. But there's an extra element here and a different symbolic context in this piece. The artist delivers her message here, which is a higher level of ruination and a different concept, that of life and death, by using taxidermy and a printed image of the hoopoe bird. She wanted to say that the shape is there, but the content, which is life itself, is not. Hana used this hoopoe bird as a symbol of survival. Because of its crown-like crest, it is considered to be the king of birds and a leader. It is historically associated with moral and spiritual guidance. A messenger. It is a legendary bird that was ready to undergo dangerous journeys. just as the artist herself who undertakes artistic journeys to reach the truth in order to survive. It is quite remarkable here to notice that Hana Malala signs her name in numerical numbers rather than Latin or Arabic alphabet. Malala even had this numerical signature tattooed on her forearm. Malala once said, "The ancient Mesopotamians wrote with shapes, which I learned to read. I can understand the intricacies of a written language without letters." This section focuses on the formal attributes of visual art that modernists from the Levant and North Africa employed in their work, namely line, shape, color, and medium. Modernists from the Arab world claimed ownership over modern art from their region and found their place in the global art market. 3. An emblematic drawing in ink on board is a quasi-calligraphic representation of the Haraz tree. Works on canvas and paper reveal both the aesthetic's plasticity and sharp expression of the Arabic alphabet. Others depict basic and organic geometrical shapes inspired by Islamic art and architecture. Some works on animal skin show signs and symbols derived from indigenous North African languages. Those rhythmic articulations inspired by Arabic calligraphy resonate with the letterist movement known as Hurufiyya. Hurufiyya emerged in the 1950s as an intersection between ancient calligraphy and modern abstraction in the context of artistic decolonization. Sculptures made of marble, wood, or bronze exemplify the artist's technical prowess and creativity. Most of those works address issues pertaining to spirituality and cultural heritage.
Let's show you the work Dalloul of Salwa Rawda Shukair. Salwa Rawda Shukair was born in Beirut in 1916 and she passed away in 2016. She is considered to be a pioneer of abstract art in the Arab world. She began in 1947 in Paris to practice geometric abstraction. In her sculpture works, the strong attachment to the Islamic artistic heritage and technique is so obvious. Many of her sculptures are composed of several individual pieces that can be taken apart and put back together to produce a never-ending construction. They are made of modules that can be installed in various possibilities. They can be presented in multiple setups like sequences or like erected puzzles. They can nest in each other or face each other or extend each other. At each composition, they gain a different perspective and meaning. This work, called Dalloul, is made of wood and it was created between 1983 and 1984. It is part of the series Dallouls that she produced while the Lebanese civil war was happening. She based her work on the idea of separation and unity, those two elements that can be interlocked to form a solid box and detached to appear as two independent pieces, can also represent the multiple cults and divisions that make the unity and separation of this country. But dual is not an exclusive reference to Lebanon. It can mean also the division on a more spiritual level in every human being. Salwa Rawda Shukair, who had an educational background in mathematics and science, understood and applied multiple mathematics and physical laws to her art. She played on the angles, on the waves and the symmetry. And although she studied in depth art and architectural traditions in Islam, her works did not exclusively show an identity-related nationalism.
Important figure of the Casablanca art school from the 60s in Morocco, Farid Belkahia was a painter and also a sculptor who sought for an artistic educational program which would reconnect Moroccan people to their cultural identity. The sculpture here, called Pouala, produced in 2010, is the second edition of a series of 8 pieces and highly shows the artist's ambition to combine art and local craftsmanship. Here, he used Moroccan materials like leather and bronze, which are traditionally used in the making of daily life items in Morocco. In the top part of the sculpture, Farid Belkahia integrated a geometric design which recalls the rich Moroccan visual culture, especially the Tifinagh signs. Among these signs from the Amazigh alphabet, the triangle here is seen by Belkahia as the symbol of harmony and balance, which links the earth and the sky. Choosing these materials and these signs was a way for Farid Belkahia to mark a break with European academic painting and to impose a Moroccan modern art based on the local artistic heritage. As he stated, tradition is the future of mankind.
Good to see you again. Thank you for watching our online exhibition, Leads in Artistic Cues from the Arab World. I hope you all enjoyed the show and the informative presentation offered by our wonderful team at the Dalloul Art Foundation. As you noticed, the show was curated thematically. It unfolded along a nonlinear chronological thread. The artworks belong to a period that ranges from the early 20th century to today. We tried our best to include artists from different countries in the Arab world, a region that overreaches a broad geographical terrain from West Asia to North Africa. As you must have concluded by now, the Arab world is house to a population from diverse ethnic, religious, and cultural backgrounds. The show features more than 60 artworks created by some of the most celebrated modern and contemporary artists from the region, including Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Sudan. Those artists register history through art, which is a universal language. As such, their art delivers messages and documents narratives from the Arab world that travel beyond geographical borders. I'm ready now to take your questions. I look forward to answering you as well as I can. Thank you.